Got it. I'd like to ask you about the housing market. You raised some eyebrows with a recent comment that you see an incipient housing bubble, so not fully here yet, but maybe or should we say, green shoots of a housing bubble. Um, you know, can you talk us through how concerned are you really about what you're seeing in the housing market?
Uh, I am, I guess, moderately concerned. We did see rapid increases in house prices since the pandemic has come on. You've got some shift in demand here about what people want out of their housing arrangements. So that's part of the story. You've got people less willing to sell their houses. So you've got low inventories. That's part of the story. But the biggest concern for me is that in the mid 2000s, we had a housing bubble. And what we learned from that experience is that if these prices go down precipitously, there they went down 30%, that caused tremendous problems both in the U.S. economy and in the global economy. So we don't really want to get into that kind of situation again, and we really don't need to be doing anything to feed into that process. And one of the things that we're doing is purchasing assets, which is intended to lower longer term yields, including mortgage yields. And so, why do that in this situation? I think is probably not the wisest policy here, and that's a good reason to pull back on these purchases. Again, I don't really think we need them at this point. We've got a lot of recovery going on. We've got a lot of further recovery that's going to happen from here to the end of the year and into 2022. So it's you've kind of got the super tanker kind of situation where you have to start turning now and thinking a little bit differently now about where we're going to be in mid 2022.
Hmm. Yeah, that was gonna be my next question is how much of this housing frothiness you think is being driven by the Federal Reserve here? It sounds like you think a good bit is coming from these bond purchases and the super low interest rates.
Well, if ever there was an interest sensitive sector, it's the housing sector. And so we've got a policy of trying to put downward pressure on longer term interest rates. So I think it absolutely is feeding in. I think you could make arguments about what the marginal impact is compared to other factors, but why push it all in this direction? Let the market decide what the house prices should be. We shouldn't be, uh, I say, feeding into this process, whatever it is in housing market.
And do you think it would make any difference if you all rolled back the mortgage-backed security purchases first before the the government purchases, or should they move together to roll both purchases off?
It's a good question. I've emphasized the mortgage-backed security part of the purchases because, that I think when we originally did that in the last crisis, 2007 to 2009, it was intended to influence the housing market. That was a case where the housing market had collapsed, and we were trying to revive it with longer term interest rates, and specifically lower rates on mortgage-backed securities. But so here we took out that playbook again and played the same card, possibly because we were anticipating further problems in the housing market when the pandemic came upon us in March and April of 2020. But as it's turned out, the housing market has actually been a very resilient market, a very strong market this whole process. And so I think we should, that's another reason to get out of the asset purchases. Now, it's true that they're close substitutes. The treasury market and the mortgage-backed securities market, they're certainly very safe, and they tend to trade fairly close together. But so in that sense, it might not matter too much if you went first with mortgage-backed or changed the composition much. I would just say that both sets of purchases are putting downward pressure on longer term interest rates. Housing is a very interest sensitive sector. So we are feeding into an incipient housing bubble. We want to stop doing that. And that's a good reason to get the tapering going, get it over with by the end of the first quarter in 2022.